Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, 14th of April, and yesterday we had our first assembly about an inspiring person. So, can you remember who that person was? Have a think? Have you got it? Tell the person you're watching with. That's right, it was David Bowie. Well done. And I hope that yesterday you had a listen to some David Bowie music and maybe talk to the people that you live with about different bits of David Bowie music that you've heard. Today, we're going to hear about a different inspiring person. This time, not somebody who's involved with music and the arts, but somebody who's involved with mathematics and computing. And this guy was really, really cool. He was amazingly, amazingly clever. His name is Alan Turing. Now, Alan Turing was a mathematician, and some of the work that he did helped us because without his work, we wouldn't have had computers today. So the computer I'm using to record this wouldn't have existed if Alan Turing hadn't done some of the groundbreaking work that he did during World War II in the period from 1939 to 1945. So this is Alan Turing as a young man. And he was a code breaker. Now, a code breaker is somebody who worked for the government and deciphered, cracked a code that hid information. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of his life using the book Little People, Big Dreams about Alan Turing. So the same range of books that we were using yesterday about David Bowie. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alan Turing's life. So, here we go. So, little Alan was a boy from London who went to boarding school. So he had to leave his mum and dad, and he had to go to a school where he slept at the school, a boarding school. And he did that when he was very young. He was shy, and nobody really expected very much of him. But often the quietest people achieve the most extraordinary things. Now at school, Alan spent so much time alone that he learned to read all by himself. He could also solve mathematical problems in his head before his teachers taught him how to do it. He was amazingly clever. Everything changed when Alan met Christopher. They both shared a passion for maths and science and planned to study at Cambridge University together. Alan just couldn't imagine life without his friend. He'd fallen in love. Now, he was ready to move to Cambridge when he got some terrible news. Christopher had died suddenly. Alan, who'd always been lonely, felt more alone than ever before. It was a very, very sad time for him. University couldn't cure his broken heart, but it kept his brain busy. And soon Alan was working on a crazy idea, a machine that could calculate any sum. Now, if you look at what's on the board, that's called binary, a system of using zeros and ones to represent any number or any little bit of information. And Alan's working on a chalkboard so big because he's got so much work to carry out that he needs a stepladder to get up there because he can't keep it all on one piece of paper. And we look at this and think, a machine that can calculate any sum, but I've got an iPad or I've got a computer or a phone or a calculator or a tablet that will do all of that for me. If I type something into Google today and I ask Google, what's 7 times 8? Then we know the answer is 56. Google will tell me the answer is 56, or I've got a range of different gadgets I could get that answer from. But none of these things existed in Alan Turing's time. He thought it would be a really good idea, and he was one of the few people who was starting to work on this to save time and effort for all of us. Alan's design was the ancestor of the computers we use today. That means it was something that came before the computers we use today. But he didn't have the chance to build it. Half of Europe had been invaded by Germany, and Alan's destiny was about to change forever. It was a very, very worrying time for everyone. A little bit like it is now, although we have more information from around the world about coronavirus because of the internet. But the people then only had the information they could get in newspapers about the war that was happening. And that's the war that we know as the Second World War that started in 1939. When Britain joined the war against Germany, Alan and other brilliant minds were hired to break the code used by Germans to send secret messages to their soldiers. He went to work at a place called Bletchley Park, and there's a famous museum there now. And Alan and the other people that he worked with worked at Bletchley Park to try and find out what these secret messages were that the Germans were sending. So they could see the message, but it didn't make any sense. It was all in code. So they tried to work it out. Mathematicians, chess players, engineers, and they all failed to crack Enigma. And that was the name of the code-making machine that was built by the Nazis, the Germans. Alan knew that another machine, not a human mind, was the only thing that was going to beat it. Nobody believed in Alan's idea, so he wrote to the Prime Minister asking for help to build his device. And once he got permission, it was just a matter of time before his machine solved the first of many riddles. And the picture that you've got here, this big grey thing, is a very, very early type of computer. It's absolutely enormous. And it was Alan Turing's idea. Alan's machine helped to win the war and saved millions of lives, but his name was kept secret and nobody knew he was a hero. Alan was just happy to go back to work on his computers. Because of Alan Turing's machine, the British government could work out what the Germans were planning, and they could do something about it. They could crack the code and work out what the secret messages were that were being sent. Tragically, Alan became the victim of an unfair law against gay people. He lost his job and was forced to take a strange treatment that made him feel very, very sad. It took more than 50 years for the British government to apologise for treating Alan and thousands of gay people so terribly. People like Alan Turing show great courage by being themselves in a time of great prejudice, where people were treated wrongly because of who they are, not like the way that we know that we should treat people at Wincham. And today the world is much more open-minded thanks to little Alan, the father of computer science, the boy who believed that those who can imagine anything can create the impossible. So there we go, guys. There is Alan Turing. He was an amazing person because he had that incredible ability with maths, but not only did he have that incredible ability with maths, just like we've talked about lots in the past to do with resilience, Alan really stuck at it. He managed to solve a problem because he didn't give up. He had an idea and he worked at it really, really hard. And in the end, he made a massive difference to people. So he used the talent that he got for maths and for science and for computing, and he did something really, really positive with it. So that's why we study maths in the way that we do at school, why we solve problems in lots of different ways, so that we can learn to think a problem through and solve a problem. And maybe if you carry on working with your maths, you can make a massive difference to people, just like Alan Turing did as well. Okay, there we go. That's our assembly for today. So we've heard about David Bowie, we've heard about Alan Turing, and tomorrow's assembly is going to be about someone else who has inspired people in a different way. Okay, see you tomorrow.